Hi guys, welcome back aboard our 44-foot hurricane damaged and Terry/PDQ catamaran project boat. The plan for this week is to continue where I left off last week. First, I want to show you how I built these temporary plywood hatches that should hopefully help us get rid of the last of the leaks. Although I do feel like I've just jinxed myself by saying that. If we are leak-free, then I should be able to get the sump installed here in the starboard keel, get the keels prepped for paint, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But all of that stuff hinges on whether or not we still have leaks. Before we get back to the leaks, I have a new addition to the arsenal here at the Under the Boat workshop. Portable power stations are awesome, and the sponsor of this week's video, Blue Yeti, just released this model. This is the Elite 200 V2. It's compact, but it packs quite the punch. Power here at the yard is somewhat reliable, but if we ever have an outage, the Elite 200 V2 should have no problem powering what I need. I think my most power-hungry setup in terms of watts here in the Under the Boat workshop is the combination of Mr. Angle Grinder and Mr. Vacuum. I think they're both rated at around 8 amps, so with a little bit of math, that turns out to be a little bit under 2,000 watts. The Elite 200 V2 can provide 2,600 watts or up to 3,900 watts in Herculean mode. With a 2,073 watt-hour lithium iron phosphate battery, this power station strikes a good balance between being portable and being able to power what you need. For instance, it'll power a small fridge for around 24 hours. On the front of the unit, we have 4 AC outlets. We also have 4 USB outlets. 2 of those are Type A and 2 of those are Type C. The Type C are rated at 100 watts. That means I can charge my laptop directly from there. That's a cool feature. We also have one of the classic cigarette car lighter plug thingies, which I never know what to call, for connecting to something like a camping fridge. And then last but not least, we also have a connection so you can hook up directly to a solar panel and charge the power station from that. Let's take the power station for a little bit of a road test. I have a hole in the port keel I need to fix. Let's see if I can do that with just the power I've brought from home. I've set up my little work area over here. I've got my power, I've got my tools, and I'm all suited up. So let's get to the glorious grinding. And there we go, a perfectly patched hole. The power station did a great job. There was absolutely no difference in being connected to that versus being connected to the grid. I think during all of that grinding, it went from 80 to 70% state of charge, so there's plenty of capacity left. Now, if I could just zip tie my epoxy pump here to the power station, then I would have the ultimate mobile fiberglass fixin' rig. All kidding aside, it is pretty freaking awesome to be able to bring power with you wherever you go. That could be a trip to the beach, camping, maybe working in a boatyard without any power, or maybe in case of an emergency you want a backup. The Elite 200 V2 will power just about anything you would need. For more information about the Elite 200 V2 and for the Black Friday deals, check out the links in the description. A great big thank you to Blue Yeti for sponsoring this video and for feeding my power station addiction. We'll get into plenty more detail about fixing holes in fiberglass when we do the hole in the other keel. For now, let's check in with past Matt to see how he built those plywood hatches up on deck. I started out by grabbing some quick measurements, including the angles of the corners, because these hatches are tapered going forward. A quick and way too expensive trip to Home Depot later, I had my materials. For this project, my miter saw, aka the Darling, is going to be awesome. I of course placed it right under one of the holes that drip water when it rains. I really need to do something about that soon. A while back I had a little embarrassing incident with my Darling. Long story short, the angle of the dangle is out, meaning 90 degrees is no longer 90 degrees. Fortunately, that can be fixed by loosening 4 screws and then adjusting the blade to actually be 90 degrees. Off by 1/10 of a degree is perfectly acceptable for what I'll be doing here. Although I never actually used the little indicator on the saw, I still adjusted it just for good measure. Back to the project at hand. In an instance of paranoia, I checked all the angles, and wouldn't you know it, they add up to 360. That's pretty neat. Measure twice, then double check twice, and then cut once. With the inner frame laid up on a piece of plywood, I used that and some stir sticks for spacers to lay up the outside frame. This is what will be the lip on the hatch. I mixed up a little bit of epoxy and thickened it with silica. Rather than using clamps, of which I don't have enough, I used TotalBoat and the accelerator. Thickened epoxy doesn't require any clamping force to get a good bond, so just having little dobs of TotalBoat holding the wood together while we're waiting for the thickened epoxy to cure is perfect. I used the same trick to hold together the inside frame. I just need this to work long enough for me to make little epoxy fillets in the corners. The last step of the day was to get 2 coats of epoxy applied to every bit of exposed wood. The next morning everything was ready for sanding. I'm not gonna go nuts here. I don't really care about the surface finish on these hatches. Having said that, I was glad to see that the inside frame fit neatly into the hatch, and I did also round over the edges to not have any painfully sharp edges to deal with when climbing in and out of the openings. For paint I used yet more of the leftover Sigma Duo 550 I brought all the way from Denmark. The hardener is starting to die on this, and I doubt I can get more of that easily around here, so I might as well use it. Up on deck I removed the 2 forward hatches. It is worth noting that the starboard hatch was super easy to remove and there was obvious signs of leaks. I'm hoping that explains why so much more water leaked into the starboard hull compared to the port hull. Ahoy guys! Still Matt from the past here. Now I am sure some of you are wondering why I didn't just rebed the old hatches, and there are a couple of reasons for that. For one of the hatches is very obviously bent, so there's no way the gasket on that one is sealing. As for the other one, I don't know what state that gasket is in, so we might very well end up in a situation where I'd have to fiddle around with that too. And just add to that the fact that both those hatches are looking somewhat old and decrepit. When the refit is all said and done, we would like to have new hatches up on deck just to have it look extra spiffy. And yeah, if we put on new hatches now, by the time I'm done with this refit, they'll look old and semi-decrepit. So hence the need for these temporary doohickeys. Chances are there's nothing wrong with the gasket on the hatch that's not bent. So I could potentially have reused that one and just made one of these doohickeys. But the difference between making one and making two is negligible, so at least now we match. I'll leave these guys to cure overnight, and then tomorrow we can get them slapped on the deck, and then fingers crossed for no more leaks. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. To not split the wood on my lovely frames, I pre-drilled with a drill the same diameter as the shank of the screw. I had a pack of TotalBoat's seal in the tool trailer. I used this stuff on another leak a few months back, and I really liked it. I applied a bead of seal and screwed the frame in place, making sure to check the squeeze out all the way around the frame. I'm not going to bother cleaning up the squeeze out. I'm not going for looks here, just function. Both hatches fit neatly in place. I think this is a good, cheap, yet functional solution to the leaky hatches. Now we just have to hope that there are no more leaks. Fingers crossed. And just like that, we are back in real time. The hatch covering thingies have been installed for about 4 days now. I am disappointed and annoyed to say that we still have water coming into the boat. You should be able to see the wet streak down there. There's also some water actually dripping down into the keel from that. So yeah, that stuff is definitely from a leak. The failure over here on the port side is even more obvious. There's some water pooling up there, so the leak is definitely somewhere from here going forward. And then of course, as you can see there, the sump is filled. That's definitely more than a gallon worth of water just in 4 days. I am truly puzzled by this. All the hatches have been removed and are covered over by plywood and sealant. The only thing that's left up on deck in terms of deck hardware are a few cleats and some deck fills. but that's a lot of water to come from something like that. I have a few different options here. I could cover up the boat with some tarps. That could get rid of the leaks, at least temporarily, until the tarps disintegrate or blow away. But after that, I would still be stuck with leaks. The last couple of hurricanes have made me slightly apprehensive as to the idea of putting a cover over the boat like a tent. I would love to be in the shade and out of the elements, but with the hurricanes, I don't think I'm going to be putting a cover over the boat anytime soon. The other option, of course, is to be a little bit patient, wait for it to rain, which, according to the weather forecast, it should rain tonight, and then just stay inside the boat and figure out where the heck the water is coming from so I can stop it once and for all. In my eyes, there's only one good choice here, and that is to be patient and find and fix the leaks once and for all. Your mileage may vary. But it's not supposed to start raining for another 8 to 9 hours. Rather than just sitting around twiddling my thumbs and waiting for weather to happen, I've come up with a little side project for the tool trailer. Right now, all of my beloved tools are stored underneath the work countertop here, and that means whenever I need to get out a tool, I have to bend down, reach in, dig around for it, and then pull it out. I have a better idea. Some kind of tool organizey box thingy to keep things in I need all the time up here on this wall would be amazing, and it would also free up space down here for other stuff. I have picked up some plywood, and for once it is not horrendously ugly and super expensive. It's actually quite reasonable. But because I was expecting to do the sump today when I got here, I haven't come up with a plan for the organizing thing, so this is going to be another #wingit project. I made a quick drawing to visualize my idea and added a couple of overall measurements. Next on the wish list for tools for the tool trailer is a table saw, but until then the tracks for the circular saw are perfect. Anyone that has ever done any kind of woodworking knows the feeling of satisfaction when you feel 2 or more pieces of wood that are the exact same size. In the spirit of trying new things, I picked up a pocket hole jig. I never saw these for sale back in Denmark, but I've always wanted to try one. It consists of this blue jig that secures the wood and guides the drill, and then the drill is this oddly shaped one that gives the fastener a flat surface to push against. The fasteners seem slightly difficult to tighten down without having sideways movement. I'm sure it's just some kind of clampy jig I'm missing, and I probably won't use this jig for anything on the boat, but I'm sure it'll come in useful for other stuff. And just like that, I was ready to install my new sandpaper organizer. After all, what is a boat refit without sandpaper? I've been keeping a sharp eye on the weather radar, and it looks like we are just about to get hit by some rain, so let's go and see if we can find some leaks. Yep, I'm feeling drops. This is awesome. Fingers crossed it lasts for a little bit. Yes, more rain. Come on. I'm gonna start over here in the starboard side, because if I can find the leak in here, I can get that sump in. Here inside of the shower, there are 2 old holes from some lights, and up here, it feels damp. I don't know where it's coming from. Moving back a little bit, there is some kind of reinforcement here, right under this hatch, that's keeping me from looking further forward, so I can't see what's going on there. This is about the best I can do, but of course it's right in front of this stupid structural thing I want to take a look. And just like that, my beautiful, beautiful leak-finding rain has stopped. Womp, womp. And there's nothing else in sight. Dang it. Well, we'll give it a few more hours. I've got plenty more tool holder doohickeys to keep me busy, so at least I won't be bored. Each one of my little tool organizers had to be custom designed to fit a specific tool. Needless to say, this was a time-consuming affair, but I had a lot of fun, and before I knew it, it was 8 o'clock. We never got any rain last night, despite the weather forecast promising it, and despite my fingers being thoroughly crossed. So today I swung by Home Depot, and I've decided to make my own rain. And also I've picked up a secret weapon to investigate that hidden area underneath the hatch in the head. Ta-da! Mr. Cheap snaky camera here. This is nothing fancy, but it should do the trick. Before we make it rain, I just wanted to show you my new organization here. Each one of these tool holders here is custom made for each tool, and yeah, I think it looks kind of cool. For instance, these two guys here, the tools are different shapes, so the holder thingies are also different shapes, just so that they both sit nice and so that they're easy and convenient to grab. And all of the tool holders are designed so that the tools will fit up there with their batteries installed. Pretty cool. Mr. Circular Saw here, he has a cutout for the blade so he sits nice and flush. The little trim router here, he cut himself a nice little recessed area where he fits nice and snug into with a hole for any bits. The reason for the clamp here on the light is simply just because I wanted to glue on a little lip there so the light doesn't fall off. Of course, there's also the ever important sandpaper organizer here with tool storage up top. I've started using whatever this brand is of sanding nets. They are a heck of a lot cheaper than the Mirka branded ones. They are from Amazon, and yeah, I'll include links for them down in the description. I can highly recommend them if you're looking for sanding nets. Of course, none of what I've showed you in there is going to get the boat done any sooner. To get the boat done, we need it to be dry. So let's make it rain. The Rainmaker 2000 was not something I pictured ever owning again after I sold my house back in Denmark, but here we are. I got the silly thing placed up on the cabin top, opened up the faucet, and as if by magic, it started raining. Armed with my light and my new snaky camera, the hunt began. I poked around for a bit without much luck. The snaky camera was cheap, and the resolution is pretty horrible, but it is cool that you can move the tip. Wiggle wiggle. I saw no water dripping from the ceiling, but water did start running into the bilge. I tried shoving the snaky camera in under the diesel tank to see where the water was coming from, but it's far too long and floppy. Wink wink, nudge nudge. Thinking the leak might be coming from the forward compartment, I braved my homemade rain and crawled down there. Alas, it was absolutely bone dry in there, not a drop of water in sight. The hatch didn't leak, nor did the two cleats, or the deck fill for that matter. I tried shoving the snaky camera back into the empty space over the head, and long behold, way back there is the deck hull joint. I was 100% sure that was not going to be the source of the leak, but it looks like I might have been mistaken about that. When there is something we really want to be true, then sometimes it's easy to jump to conclusions. Previously, I had noticed that what I could see of the deck hull joint was glassed on the inside, which is awesome, had it been true for the entire boat. Here's a quick little cross section of the boat to illustrate. Down here is the hull and up here is the deck. On most boats there's some kind of sealant smushed in between the two. This is what forms the deck hull joint. Then there's usually some kind of tow rail connecting the two. But this sealant can and will fail at some point. So on some boats, like for instance aboard Athena, the inside of the deck hull joint is glassed, which is awesome because when this sealant fails, you're not going to get water inside of the boat. Last night I checked with one of the guys that used to work for PDQ, and of course what I had imagined is in no way possible, because the way the two heads are built on this boat is that that's a molded part that gets put into the hull before the deck gets attached, and the sealing in the head is a part of that. So once it's in, you can't access the deck hull joint from inside of the boat. I believe I only have one chance of it not being the deck hull joint that's leaking, and that's this stanchion base that used to be up on deck. If this was leaking, which I think it's pretty obvious that it was, then maybe that could explain some of the water. To not leave you guys with a giant cliffhanger, last night I removed the stanchion base and I filled the two holes with a little bit of sealant. Let's turn on the Rainmaker 2000 and cross our fingers. The reason I say crossed fingers is because if the deck hull joint is leaking, then that's not a quick fix. That's going to be a somewhat extensive project. Whew. So far, no signs of water, but we better let it run for a while. Directly aft of the head here in the little sump area, or soon to be sump area. So far, no sign of water, but it's only been a couple of minutes. For fan i helvete. Yep, we have water. That is definitely water coming from the deck hole joint. Well, I kinda had a feeling, because that amount of water would be a lot from the two small little holes in this stanchion base, but yeah, this is not great news. But this, as with most problems humans are involved in, it is just a matter of time and money. Off the top of my head, I can think of 2, maybe 3 potential solutions for this issue. Unfortunately, I think the, in my eyes, correct solution is going to involve some amount of demolishing of the head, which is kind of annoying because that was actually a part of the boat that we weren't necessarily going to change that much. So, yeah. I'll consult with some people that are smarter than I am and see if I've missed something obvious. But yeah, depending on what the fix is gonna be, I better get busy implementing that next week, because it doesn't really make sense for me to do a whole lot of other work inside of the boat before it's actually dry. It is a boat refit. It's a hurricane damaged boat. There are bound to be detours. This was probably just the first of many, but yeah, we'll get back to it next week. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. See you!